So yeah, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go in or not. So are the Pro phones that much better for that type of situation than the Mac? Is it Max and Pro? Is that the different ones on the iPhones?
Depends on what you get. How much you spend.
Oh, thumbs up.
Oh, here we go.
We're on.
That means we're going. Hello, Mr. Keith. How are you this morning?
Doing great. And you?
So Keith bowed out of, I think I scared him.
You did.
I had
Yeah.
I had an insect bite a couple of weeks ago, and I ended up in the darn hospital for 3 days with high-dose IV antibiotics.
Right.
Because it was going bad for me.
Right.
So I think I scared Keith. He tangled with
I'm a
those
little
wasps.
more. Well, I had a wasp yesterday, so I've got, a finger swollen, and it went into my hand this morning.
He saw what happened to me, and I think getting in the chamber and the circulation, I think I pushed that venom around my body because my feet turned purple, my back had a big lesion on it,
Yeah.
my whole back had a rash on it.
Oh, wow.
After a 100-foot dive, and it was after that dive I went in the hospital for 3 days. So,
Yes, I thought I'd be a little more cautious.
And I'm going to be a little more cautious. I had no idea, and so anyway, funny things.
That's right.
We're going to pick up where we left off. How about a little disclaimer?
Yes, disclaimer.
Oh,
So
this is Keith with PrevailOverCancer.com, and I'm Paul with Hyperbaric Plus in Oklahoma City, 122nd and Rockwell. Go ahead.
Yes, okay, yes. So we're providing information talking about repurposed medications and fungus and virus infections and cancer. The information we're providing is for education purposes. It is not, we are not your doctor. It is not medical advice. It's for education, so you can learn, do some thinking and some research, and talk to your integrative clinician. We call them functional medicine practitioners in the United States. And so if we do talk about supplements or even repurposed medications, they're not actually approved by the FDA for a lot of medical purposes. They're to treat or cure or prevent any type of a health concern or a disease. So once again, check with your doctor, integrative care clinician, so you can get the right type of information and dose and make sure that that's going to be correct for you. So last week we talked about infections and related to cancers, and so there is, some infections can definitely increase the risk of cancers, and primarily the one that I think of most is going to be virus infections, increase the risk of some cancers, and like Epstein-Barr virus, for example, and then H. pylori, a bacteria type infection in the stomach, increases the risk of gastric cancers and esophageal cancers. So matter of fact, by the way, while I'm thinking of it, I'll mention it again later. You may submit your questions online. Ryan will print those off for us in about 30 minutes. I forgot to take my watch off to set it out to look at the time. But so we'll take those questions and answer those questions as time allows in about 30 minutes from now. So submit those questions so that we can address those and answer those for you. By the way, I'm going to be working off of a handout to try and make sure I cover as much information as I can appropriately, and I'm going to give a very brief summary. If you want to go into detail, download this. I've got all the medical terms and the agents, the medications, repurposed drugs listed. I'm not going to go through every single one. We'd be here for hours, and so I'm going to kind of skim over that. But I will use this as an outline. You can go to PrevailOverCancer.com. The Learning Center, at the bottom of the Learning Center, I have several things that you can download, no charge for that. And then at Hyperbaric.plus, the Resources tab has got this information. Also, these videos are also recorded, and usually you'll find them, I know, recorded. Paul puts them on his website. I haven't had time to do that yet, but also on YouTube keeps a track of those. If we go to our channels, go to the live section, and you can see all the live videos listed there. So it's a great resource, a great thing to look at. Once again, go to our websites and download these guides. So, and just kind of a basic recap, 1 out of 8 cancers, are potentially caused by an infection. And so So the goal is, and when I'm working with a client, is to go back and look at their health history. What are those? What are those things related to that particular cancer? What can be related? And today we're going to go more into one aspect is why dewormers and antifungals seem to help out with cancer. And actually, it's a really a fairly new area, and so it's only been the past 6 years or so when we've really seen quite a bit of research now coming out. It's actually very common research. Starting in 2020, there were some studies that found that there were some fungal components were inside the cells. We're going to mention that a little bit more. Inside tumors, but I'll be more specific. Inside tumors. And so we'll go into that a little bit more. That's a little teaser. I want you to realize that we're going to be going into into several different things. So, but 1 in 8, and last week I tried to establish is that the it's not always the infection itself, but it could be the I'll call it a comorbidity or additional problems of that infection that may be increasing the risk. For example, a new article just came out showing that people that eat a large quantity, that's subjective, how much is large, but a large amount of spicy, hot peppers increases the risk of stomach cancer and esophageal cancer. Now, that's not the first time this has come up. So I've actually reported on that before, and social media people blasted me, well, that's false, it's false. Well, we keep learning more, and so as time is going on, we're learning more. They don't know why. And so, and actually it depends even on the region of the world, so there could be other factors involved. But another study came back and found that high amounts of those peppers, and those peppers can create some inflammation. I've experienced that before. I literally, there was one pepper, I don't know what it was, I ate it, and literally my tongue turned beet red and got enlarged from that. And so I don't eat that pepper anymore. So
which one was it?
I don't know what. It was a little tiny thing. It's about this big, and used to be a local chain. They're not around anymore, and it's more like probably a decorative type thing on the plate. Well, that was a mistake.
Well,
It was horrible.
I don't pick up any pepper like that. I'll
was
cook
horrible.
it and tone it down. Anyway.
But doing that repeatedly creates some damage.
I get it. Imagine.
Okay, irritation. And so if we get a cell that's damaged due to an irritation, and it survives, and it's not corrected or not removed by the body, now we have this potential cancer concern, coming up. So that's really kind of an underlying type thing. So let's see. So there's basically 4 mechanisms involved in this, in infective agents, the whole class of bacteria, viruses, fungus, and parasites. And so the 4 mechanisms include this chronic inflammation, like I'm talking about the peppers, doing that all the time. Chronic inflammation, sustained antigenic stimulation, that means the immune system is trying to take care of something and get rid of it. That creates some inflammation. That's what's going on right now. Okay, my immune system is responding to that, and so that is creating that inflammation. That is an irritant, and that also is going to be a type of an inflammation thing going on. And then direct genotoxicity, meaning where an agent can actually damage the genome, the genes, and flip a cancer cell. That's typically more of a virus type thing. And then immune exhaustion. So the immune system, if I kept getting stung by wasps every day, actually my body would probably get used to it, and it wouldn't become as much of a problem. So people that handle bees, a lot of time beekeepers will kind of get into that situation. It's kind of like their body's used to it. But if it's not, then my body keeps responding. Parts of my immune system will get exhausted, not work, and therefore not keep cancer cells under control. So that's the exhaustion type situation. So what kind of starts this conversation is people like Joe Tippins, and he took Fenbendazole and had great results with that for his lung cancer. And so people just assume that, well, since you take an antiviral or an antifungal, anti-parasite medication, if it has anti-cancer benefits, then that means that the cancer is a parasite. Well, it's not that type of parasite. I do think that, cancers are a type of parasite. They are living off of the host. They're doing things inappropriate. They're not a benefit for the body, and they're stealing nutrients like a parasite would do. So in that sense, yes, it is a parasite, but it's not that simple. So parasite medications work by help keeping the parasites from growing, and therefore they eventually die out. So, and one of the ways that they work is by I'll try to show this. So we have a parasite cell, and they're going to grow and divide. And when they grow and divide, they do this. They kind of spread, and they're getting ready. Now we have two cells almost forming. We have this spindle and these fingers that are kind of stretching between the two. That last step, this is stuff we learned in biology back in many years ago, and in school. Well, that's where the parasite drugs work. They work right here to keep this division from going on. That's one of the mechanisms. And so it doesn't really damage the parasite and kill it. It just helps keep it from growing, or even paralyzes it, is another way to think of that. Can even paralyze it so that, for example, if no matter where it's at, if it's attached onto the body with its mouth and in the intestines, and it's paralyzed and now it's opened up, and then it can be flushed out. Okay, so it doesn't really kill it, but it has some parasite type actions, and in that growth factor. Now another thing is that actually cancer cells and parasites and fungus, are all related in a type of a cell that they have very similar type actions. They use sugar. They love sugar. They will use that sugar. The pores or the openings in the cell walls are similar, and they allow nutrients in and out in a similar way. And so there's actually something else I'm leaving off too. There's one other thing that they do along that line. Let me get that just a second. And well, that's basically it. Yeah, the tubulins, the way the mitochondria makes energy using glucose. And so yeast and fungus, for example, very well known. Yeast, which is used to make a lot of alcoholic beverages, loves that sugar and it grows. Candida in the body uses yeast, and so there's a lot of similarities in those cells, but then the way the drugs work is different. And so the antifungal drugs, anti-parasite drugs work on very specific, and I have all of this listed in this guide. I'll mention a few of them from some of the more popular type antifungal, anti-parasite drugs, the way they work. But we now know, thank you science for studying this and figuring this out, there's all kinds of acronyms for all of these mechanisms and the way that they work. So it's not this always. It's not just that growth factor, but there's many other type factors involved. Yes, glucose is part of it. So, the anti-parasites often do decrease the cancer cells and parasite cells from being able to use glucose for energy. It helps to slow it down and help to starve it.
Keith, I get a lot of people that come in, or I hear it out there because people know what I do, and that this helps cancer and helps people that are dealing with cancer, keeps their immune system up. But I have people, they get diagnosed with cancer and they just run out and get Fenbendazole and Ivermectin and mebendazole, and they just start taking it. And the one thing I've learned from you is all of those repurposed drugs have targeted cancers.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes, they do.
So it's not across the board. You start taking one of these because you've got cancer. There's what they're studying now. They're trying to really target what repurposed drug is going to work with what cancer, and then even alternating between those are very beneficial. I've heard you consult with people. Correct.
On that exactly. So, for example, one of the ways that our body keeps cancer under control is P53. P53, if it's not shaped right, or if there's a zinc deficiency, it won't work and get rid of the cancer, repair the cells and get rid of the cancer. And so, and actually that's one of the mechanisms that Fenbendazole has. Mebendazole doesn't seem to work as much in that pathway. And so there are some TP53 mutated tumors and cells that don't even have the P53. It won't. You can't correct it. It won't work. And so fenbendazole might not work as well. It still has some actions, but may not be as good and not work as a mini type things, where mebendazole might work a little bit better. So, for example, there's a study with triple negative breast cancer and ovarian cancer suggesting that mebendazole, since it does not use P53 as its primary action, may work a little better. And so, and we're talking about another one too, about prostate cancer and skin cancer and things like that. So there can be some, that's correct. I think we got to be careful, and
you don't just go to the vet store or get online and start ordering all these things until you identify. In fact, we've talked a little about a provider out in Utah that he does a total genetic testing on your whole body. He takes everything he can find out about your body before we ever talk about how we're going to attack it. And mainstream medical, I don't think, does it.
They're not really doing it, not to that degree. And so
yet, that's what needs to happen.
Not yet. And so I do have a client I'm working with, and so she does have ovarian cancer or a history of it. And so I think I forgot to turn my phone off. So Ryan, if you'll get that. So
well, I don't mean to get off the target, but I just hate when I meet people and they go, yeah, I'm dealing with cancer, so I bought all these repurposed drugs to take, and I go, not without guidance.
Yes, that's right. And we have to have the right dosage. For example, and timing, and consideration of other medications. And so, matter of fact, I often have people on social media asking, well, what should be the dose? I don't know.
And
for sure.
You can't say unless they're your client. Whatever.
Right, yeah. And so there's some liabilities, personal liabilities, if you're not doing the right thing. And so, Ryan, one option is the top left button. If you press the top left button, you can put silence my phone. So if he wants to do that, he figured that out already. So the top left or top right button, whichever one that is, top left I think it is. If you press that, it puts it on silent. Okay. I wasn't here for your briefing about putting phones on silent earlier, since I didn't do the dive today. So, okay. So, Fenben and Meben, I put those together. They are still different. Even though they're similar, they're in the same class of drugs. They're used for dog and pinworms and such. They do work on this tubulin or this cell division type action. They help with help keep cancer cells able to use glucose, sugars, for energy and growing. And then there's also this P53 with Fenben. Meben might not, but still it may affect that down. Those are some of the main actions on that. Ivermectin originally was invented for what's called river blindness and scabies. And so, but it works at what's called a PAK1 inhibition, a WNT, a WNT, and blockade, P-glycoproteins, and there's several different things. And it seems like it actually kind of makes the tumors more receptive to other treatments. And there actually is a human. So that's another thing that's frustrating, is that there are not human studies much. We're going to see that, but this is new science. 5 years is nothing, in the medical world. And so, even if there were a study today showing that this worked, and trying to bring out a drug, it'd be 10 years before they could bring it out.
Well, that'd be an animal study, and then the next is
you had to go through. We have the lab studies. We are getting a few of the animal studies. Then we have to do the human studies, and they have to crank on the numbers and statistics. And there's not enough money. There's not millions and millions and millions or billions of dollars involved in profits.
Especially on a drug that already exists.
It exists, and it's off patent anyway. So it's like, that's a kind of a problem. And I think that we will see some companies come out with some things that where they're changing the way it's absorbed. And getting a patent on the process of making a version of it. I think we'll see that happen actually fairly soon. So ivermectin, there is a recent human study though that is going on in triple negative breast cancer using mebendazole with ivermectin. and, excuse me, I stand corrected. It's ivermectin with a immune therapy, and it seems to be helping the immunotherapy to work better. Not mebendazole, but immunotherapy. There are some case studies where some doctor groups are collecting data and submitting that data for publication, but that is not quite a full-scale study, but still it's great information. I love that. Niclosamide is another one that I definitely have people that ask me about that. Originally is invented for tapeworms. It is a mitochondrial uncoupler, and so it helps keep the mitochondria in these weird acting cells to be able to grow and do their thing, and then hits many different things. Several different 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different actions all at the same time. So it's pretty impressive. Although once again, it's hard to get, hard to dose, appropriately on that. Artemisinin is a herbal type product that is available. It actually has been used for many years for malaria, another parasite, and so it actually helps the body to use iron as an oxidative damaging thing to damage the cells. So if your iron is low, that product isn't going to work. So that seems to be the primary method for that to work. So once again, working with a clinician, trying to figure that out, get the right combination, what's going on in the person's body, do they need to be taking iron with that or not, to get that effect. We have to be cautious. Too much iron is oxidative, and too much iron is associated with increased risk of some cancers too. So we have to be careful about that. Another one that's kind of interesting is itraconazole, which is also a fungus for fingernail and systemic whole body funguses. And it actually uses what's called it blocks a hedgehog. It's kind of a weird name, but that's a growth process that some cancers, not all of them, use. And matter of fact, I checked today because this product does have both basal cell carcinoma, anti-hedgehog action, and then in another mechanism, it has some prostate type actions against prostate cancer cells. But prostate cancer cells typically don't have hedgehog. So it's kind of a piecemeal type thing. So one agent isn't going to cure everybody. And so we have to have the right combination for the right concern. And then ketoconazole is another antifungal. It's been around for many years. Matter of fact, I've watched that one for a long time before I really concentrated on cancer. It was amazing how it was actually used for many different health issues. But it also shut down androgen production, testosterone production. So therefore, it has a kind of a anti-prostate cancer type concern. It's been used as a drug for that. I'm not saying you should do that because prostate cancer cells, have a tendency to ignore that eventually. So cancer can even change, what it's doing, its sources. So with that, so all of these cells, they are cancer cells. The way they function, parasites and funguses and yeasts are related in many of their actions, and the way they allow nutrients in, the way they burn calories, and such like that. So there's a term for that cell. It's called a eukaryocyte. So EUKARYOT. Excuse me, I mispronounced that. Eukaryote. There we go. So it's a weird term, but anyway, they're similar.
That's why I got you years.
Yeah.
Throw all
so
these
I can
terms
stumble
out.
around too. So matter of fact, I practiced that word and I messed it up. So it's not a common word. You don't have to worry about that word. And so matter of fact, I try to talk, in a language that most people can understand. So, including myself on that. So is there fungus in tumors? Yeah, there can be, definitely. Does that mean that does that mean that cancer is fungus? Not really. Okay, they have similar type actions.
They're going to go where there's a deficit in the body because they can both bloom there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And what do they love? Sugar, glucose, elevated glucose. Now, it's not like we can eliminate glucose. We have to have that. but high amounts just feeds that process. So those of you that have done any type of yeast work, or rather, let's say brewing, beverages with yeast, know that the amount of yeast, the amount of sugars, impacts that alcohol as to how much alcohol is going to be made. So certain things like grapes. Actually, I was picking some grapes that I grow. I have a few vines, and got stung.
Ferment?
And nope, not going to ferment, and not going to ferment. And so
I got you.
it would be kind of curious. I'd be an experiment. I like science, and I like that idea about that process. But there's only so much sugar in the grapes, and so it will only produce up to a certain amount of alcohol.
Right.
Not as much alcohol as using other sugars like grains and corn and things like that. Higher sugar, higher alcohol content. So it's it's a very interesting concept, and I may do that someday.
I don't know if there's a place to throw this in, but one of our clients that you've met recently, he's from California. In fact, he's out there taking his next dose of Keytruda. And but he had such on his neck, it was parasitic. It was all parasites that was driving the tumor. So there was a tumor right against his jugular, and then his neck. He says, I haven't seen a picture, but he says it was this big.
I saw the pictures, yeah.
So, and it was all parasitic. It was all parasites, and so he did all these things using, what would mainstream medical had done against that besides some of these repurposed drugs? How would you fight that? I mean,
well, they would have, given chemotherapy, radiation, and things like that. So he did do a cryoablation. They injected probably nitrogen, liquid nitrogen, into that and froze a lot of it, but they couldn't get in close due to his vocal cords and his carotid artery type thing. So they couldn't go in and get all of that, but they did inject things in there too, which I think is a fascinating area.
It's all new, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's new type things, literally. And going in and freezing it to kill it, but then also that creates this antigen, your immune system response to attack it and get rid of it. And then the immune system has a memory. Oh, we are familiar with that kind of cell. Come on, let's go get it. Okay, so we get that memory response, and so that's what he's working with. And then he's taking the Keytruda product, an immune PD-1 product that actually flips off a switch so that the body the T cells will recognize the cancer cells. There's potential side effects because now it flipped off that switch. Now it may attack other organs too, the T cells. So it's kind of like to rev up the T cells in a way with that.
It was interesting that every time he's talking to other clients, parasite driven.
Yeah, and so parasite driven, yes. Was it parasite in the tumor cancer cell itself, the DNA? Maybe not, but it definitely could have been a comorbid type sugar, poor circulation type thing, that allowed that to happen. Yeah.
And he's a firefighter, and what do firefighters do? Smoke eaters.
Yeah, they've been around smoke and right.
It's full of toxins.
Yeah,
and so no telling where all this started.
Yeah,
those are just things that when you stack them all up together, and you start looking at the big picture, it's like, wow.
Yeah, I've had several. They do a much better job now, protecting that person, the firefighter. They have the breathing apparatus. I mean, they strap that on instantly before they even start to go into that building, which was good. But there's still physical skin exposures, and it depends on what is burning as of what that chemical is, and so so that stuff is still absorbed. And even though they have all the protective gear on, once again, it's safer now than ever, but.
And I just have another thought. Firefighting, it wasn't like that.
No, that's right. No, not for him. Not for that age of a person. Matter of fact, I know several guys like that too. That with not just his type of cancer, but other types of cancers going on.
People don't understand. It's not like sitting by a campfire and smelling that wood burn.
Right.
You're sitting in a fire and everything plastic.
Yeah, that's right.
Our house is full of plastic. Our business is all plastic, and it creates all these toxins.
That's right.
Which is making all these crazy different types of cancers you know, we got the burn pit guys that are
Yeah,
diving
that's
with
right.
us. They're in the same deal. If you're a veteran, you understand what the burn pits were. They have acres of land that they throw all the things, because when they go into the Middle East into a base, they have to remove everything.
Mhm.
Well, it's easier to burn it than it is to remove it.
Yeah.
So they just drive a bulldozer around so they can keep stirring up the fire, and it's just crazy what they've been exposed to.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And some of those people were having to do that all the time, every day. That was their job.
Yeah.
So, you know, with that. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so there were some research studies in like September 2022, studies, 2 different studies in the journal Cell, C-E-L-L, that's the name of that medical journal. And they evaluated over 17,000 tissues from people, tumor tissues from over 17,000 people, and blood and the plasma samples. And they found that 35 different types of cancers had fungal DNA in the tumors. Now, that's not saying it's not mixed in with the DNA, okay? So we have to be a little cautious, you know, about that. And then there was another study that found that they found actually one fungus cell per 10,000. So one fungus cell per 10,000 tumor cells. And so, which is kind of curious. And so once again, the researchers kind of jumped, oh, there's maybe a causation type thing with that. But now the additional researchers, you know, questioned that. They contacted the authors and said, okay, what about this? Could have been some contamination, because these samples were coming in from all over a region. I mean, you know, and so there were samples that the doctor would do the surgery, send that sample in, or draw the blood, send it in. What were the controls? I mean, and so there was a question about potential contaminations, you know, type of a thing. And so actually all of the authors, you know, agreed that they should retract that article. And it wasn't forced on them, but they agreed that, you know, they need to redo that. And so I'm sure they probably are working on that. Not saying that it wasn't completely valid, but they are questioning some of their techniques and how they got the samples, and so they're going to reevaluate that. So it was a little bit frustrating because, I read that. Matter of fact, I quoted that, and now it's been retracted. Has anybody talked about that? No. And so, you know, that's not the big news. So, but we're learning. Mm-hmm. So we're learning about this. And then there's also a pancreatic cancer study that found that there was I believe it was a yeast a yeast that was associated with many types of pancreatic cancer. Whenever they gave an anti-yeast fungus type medication in the test tube, laboratory cells, the pancreatic cancer cells quit growing. When they took that away, that yeast started growing again in that growth medium, which is a sugar medium. The cancer started growing again. So that's still not quite saying that the yeast itself was directly involved, but it maybe was creating a situation and other factors that allowed that to happen. So we're learning. So that, once again, I want to stress that I'm not saying that, you know, it's not a complete issue. Or I mean, like yeast and fungus and parasites are inside the cancer cells. They are not the cancer, but they may be setting up an environment that's allowing it to happen. So kind of like the firemen. Mm-hmm. You know, they're in that heat, inflammatory situation anyway, and all those chemicals, and that just genetic for a few of those people, it's going to create a problem. Mm-hmm. And some people it won't be. And then also, let's see, in June of 2024, that's when they retracted that article. So actually, it took a couple of years of research and trying to figure this out when they retracted that article. It was in 2024 versus 2022 for that article. Okay, so let's see here. What else? So, by the way, submit your questions. We have a couple of minutes, and then Ryan's going to print off those questions for us. We'll answer those live. Also, you can get this handout. It goes into much more detail. I'm just giving a very brief summary. As a matter of fact, if you're interested, there's also links on the back or the back of this sheet, the last page, links that you can click on and go to the medical journals and read these things. So
Sure that wasp didn't make it all the way up to your tongue?
how's my tongue? How's my tongue look? Is it swelling? So, okay. So at this time, we're learning. They're researching it. Like, we can't say that fungus causes cancer. It may be setting up an environment that's allowing it to happen. If fungi was creating a problem, then we would see a more of a pattern, literally, of where they are populations that are taking antifungals and have reduced risk of cancer. We're not really seeing that happen. So
I don't know if I want to throw this wrench into what we're talking about, but there's a lot of mushrooms that actually fight cancer. A lot of fungi that they're finding are beneficial for cancer.
That's right. And so there's some immune properties in those, including what are called beta and alpha glucans, that are very important. And actually, that's in the cell wall of yeast, for example. They isolate beta glucans out of that, and when that goes into our body, it stimulates our body. But a yeast overgrowth in the body, when they do a blood test, they'll see those beta glucans in the blood too. So, and actually, that's when doctors are panicking that a candida overgrowth in the body. So, but yeah, matter of fact, I'm taking that to, just trying to make sure I don't get a bacterial infection. So beta glucans, I do like that. So let's see, if fungi, created cancer, or actually was involved in, if fungi was cancer, in the body, then we would see certain mutations occurring, and would see better results than what we see. When we give the antifungal medications, it doesn't always work for all of these cancers. So it's not an easy type thing, because the antifungals have other side effects or other actions. Matter of fact, that's the whole purpose of repurposed medications. We're being blessed with that now, in that actually researchers are looking at medications and what are the other benefits of that medicine. For example, I'll look up ACE inhibitors for blood pressure. ACE inhibitors have some anti-cancer actions. Antihistamines have also, by lowering histamine, have some anti-cancer benefits. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs decrease IL-6, has some anti-cancer benefits. So we're now learning that there's other things, and really we're already starting to see this in the integrative area, and actually oncologists are starting to accept it more. And so I had a client the other day, they talked to their oncologist and said, what about such and such and such and such? And he says, well, I just don't know enough information. Instead of saying, oh no, or laughing at them or threatening to fire them, he says, well, I just don't have enough information to make a comment.
So if ever you're going to ask one of your providers those kinds of questions, be prepared, be armed. Send them a link to a study, or help them do their work, because they're busy and they're not going to go searching it out if you don't give them a course to get there. You can print off a paper, and for example, I wouldn't go and say that anti-parasite drug, I'm going to take the anti-parasite drug because I think parasites are cancer. That's not going to go over, okay? The practitioner is not going to go for that. But if you say, here's an article, and you highlight it in yellow as how that anti-parasite medication, what action it was, WNT or whatever that happened to be, and that cancer was the action that it had against those cancer cells, and you hand it to the doctor, they're going to be more accepting to that. The only way we're going to ever make change is if we communicate with our doctor, tell them that this is what we've learned, get some of their feedback. And, I get excited every time one of our clients come in and say, hey, I talked to my doctor about this or this. It's off the reservation. Yeah. And there was a positive conversation about it. It's
Right.
not all negative anymore.
That's
It
right.
seems
It's-
to be really changing. and
it's
the
getting
only
better.
reason it's going to change is because we're changing it.
That's right.
So,
Exactly. It's
thank
kind of
you,
like,
man.
the fact of that we're, what we're doing, what we drink out of, and the coffee we drink, and the organics and things like that. That those little changes that we're each making, multiplied out millions of times, has an impact. With that. And so, by the way, cinnamon in the coffee is great. I
Isn't that-
love your
isn't that
coffee.
awesome? Thank you.
I love your coffee. So, on that. So, okay. Time for questions now. And so, do you think pancreatic cancer, or do you think pancreatic cancer can be cured? That one's a tough one. There's definitely a lot of cancers that are very difficult. For example, pancreatic cancer and some colon cancers. Matter of fact, we know a gentleman with this issue have a KRAS mutation, KRAS. That's aggressive. And so, we can address that to a certain extent, but we have to compensate in other mechanisms to try to shut it down. So I do have people, matter of fact, I do know people, with pancreatic cancer that are doing fantastic. I know others that it's going fast. They're not doing well. So I wish I could say, and I don't want to mislead anybody, but the more things you do, the better the odds are, okay? And the better the outcomes are going to be. So, and the earlier you address that.
That's the thing about pancreatic cancer, is so far along before
Yes,
it ever shows itself.
Same thing like ovarian cancer. It's kind of like in the body, and we ignore things. And I'm not a female, so I can't talk about that area. But pancreatic cancer, ignore the digestive issues or weird things that are going on, or blood sugar problems, and we ignore that. By the time they figure it out, and you go through the steps, it's 6 months or a year of doctor's visits to figure it out. That's late, and so that makes it much more difficult. When you're doing sustained water fasting for 7 to 12 days, do your repurposed drugs have a bigger effect? It could. And so the more stresses that we can use on the cancer cells, the better. And actually, so I mentioned several times, these type of cells do love glucose, sugar. So the more that you restrict that glucose to a certain extent, your body, your liver, your muscles will make glucose and glycogen that turns into glucose. So we can only restrict it to a certain point, but that creates another stress on the body. And so I like to tell people that, if I were to poke at you or a cancer cell with one finger, you go, Keith, what are you doing? But if I poked at you with my fist, with 5 things plus the rest of these bones here, you're going to know that I'm trying to get your attention and I damaged you, okay? Well, same thing with cancer. Just the more things that we can do, the better. And so fasting is one of those things that I often will use. We do have to be cautious about that. Depends on a person's body weight, their medications, and other things. But I often will continue with, anti-parasite type things and other supplements during a fasting period.
Well, all the things you talk about in the chamber, there's infrared saunas, there's fasting, there's a lot of people talk about hydrogen. There's so many things.
Yes, and so we want to do
And we want to
as
do the
many
things
as what
that
we
don't
can
take
do.
our body down.
Exactly, yeah.
That maintains our immune system.
And I have to admit, most of my clients that I see have been trying fasting. They've been doing fasting at a very strict keto diet, and they're down to, as we say, skin and bones. And it's not working. So we're trying to recover them and build them up. So I cautiously, with the fasting, it can be appropriate, and so it often is part of my protocol. But a 12-day fast, 7-day fast, and I'm usually more like doing a few days at a time and building up to that. It's not like an all of a sudden type thing. So what types of drug interactions could become relevant with these agents? Great question. It really depends. And so some of these drugs, some of these antifungals have a significant liver damage problem. I didn't even mention that. And some of the antiparasites, mebendazole and fenbendazole, have a tendency to raise liver enzymes. for some people. And so, as a matter of fact, I have some clients that cannot take it, even half of a dose. They can't take it. Their liver enzymes go up every single time. And I have other people that are taking 2-3 times the normal dose, what most people take, and no problem with their liver enzymes.
I think it'd be safe to say that one of our clients that is, he went that route. He tried to self-medicate with the repurposed drugs, and he ended up at a liver specialist in Norman.
Oh, really? Okay.
To rebuild his liver before he proceeded anymore, because he
Okay.
really damaged by not understanding the big picture. I
Right.
mean, the synergistic effect can be both positive and negative. So when you synergistically do things that are wrong,
Yeah,
you
that's
get
right.
there quicker, and those numbers showed up really fast.
So if you've got 5 drugs going through your liver through a same metabolism pathway, a CYP 450 or 3AY, I mean, there's all kinds of acronyms for these pathways. But if you have drugs and herbs going through that at therapeutic doses, you have an increased risk of concerns.
Yeah, people don't think about herbs. Herbs are they are medicine, and they're
They-
going to change things in your body. And
They do have an impact.
people go get some cat's claw or some,
Yeah.
they go pick it up at the store and just go at it. Well, that's going to change things.
It can have an
Yeah.
impact, and good and bad. Matter of fact, in pharmacy school, we actually had a 3-hour course over a semester on natural products. So digoxin, heart medication, comes from foxglove. Okay, and is that what Shakespeare had a story about poisoning somebody with that? And
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah.
so natural products can have.
Sorry, I'm just not
an
into
impact.
Shakespeare, so you caught me on that one.
And so.
You're a well-rounded person, aren't you, Keith?
Not quite that. I don't read Shakespeare every day, so but that was just an interesting story,
Yeah.
about that. And so yes, there's actually been cases of natural products, poisoning.
Yep.
Okay, so
Oh,
we
yeah.
have to be careful about that, and they're all going through the liver. So all these things go into the stomach, first pass effect through the liver, and they can preoccupy the liver and create other things to become more toxic because you can't get rid of it.
Yep.
So, matter of fact, back in the 80s, I was a nursing home consultant, and my job was, as a pharmacist, going through the charts, and anytime a person was taking more than 3 medications, I had to write a letter to the doctor trying to get the doctor to take them off of drugs because the liver can only handle so many things at once. And so therefore, yes, it could be a definite concern. And that's where you have to, actually do some interaction checks with your integrative practitioner. So, what about apricot seeds for breast cancer? A natural product, a toxin, and there is some research supporting it, but it is also toxic to other cells. And so there's not enough research, and due to the toxicity issues of it, it's not high on my list, on that. I can't say anything else because I could get banned on social media. So, so what does it mean to call fungi residents or modulators? And so residents meaning, I'm assuming, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but residents, we do have fungus in our body, bacteria in our body. Our blood isn't necessarily sterile, but that's a response of the immune system. But the residence means it's just there, and then a modulator is that it's going to be changing the effect, and modulation can go up or down. And so, beta glucans are immune system modulators that ramp up the immune system, to help get rid of things that aren't supposed to be there, including cancer cells, and but also. Some of these type items can also create inflammation that are stimulants for cancer. So I hope I kind of answered that question on that. Can you repeat where you get the free articles? And so the handouts are available at prevailovercancer.com, the Learning Center tab or page, and then at hyperbarics.plus at the resources page. So download those. There's actually most of our seminars or handouts are located on those pages. And does a baby aspirin a day help with cancer metastasis? So actually, a low dose aspirin, around 81 milligrams. Europe has a little different strength on that. Does seem to help keep platelets from allowing cancer cells to attach to them and metastasize. Also, there's a little bit of an anti-inflammatory effect, so almost everything we've been talking about today is not just like one thing, but it works in several different mechanisms. So anti-inflammatory to a certain extent, and then, yes, it does have kind of an anti-platelet metastasis type action, typically. We still have to be cautious about potential bleeding issues with that. And then how does oregano help defend against cancer? So that's a great question. So oregano and other, I'll just say aromatic herbs, there's all kinds. Everything from basil and oregano and gosh, there's thousands of them. Rosemary, and all of these herbs and other products. Matter of fact, and I'm thinking about my garden, and I do have all these herbs, cilantro and all these kind of herbs growing, but even the stems from the mulberry plant, actually the stems and the leaves, have anti-cancer actions. And they're even studying the shells of walnuts for the anti-cancer action.
I got black walnut oil.
Okay, yeah.
Really, I put it on my salad. It's got a awesome flavor. I mean, I like variety.
Yes.
But that black walnut oil on my salad, it's
all kinds. Yeah. So there's all types of aromatic herbs. Aromatic meaning you can smell it, and those have anti-cancer type actions, and so antifungal type actions too. And matter of fact, if we get high enough of a dose, it can actually help fight infections in the gut. Many different supplement companies have those things listed in their ingredients, or some people grow them. And matter of fact, traditionally, for thousands of years, many cultures would actually do seasonal. These aromatic herbs and onions and garlic, would grow, and they would consume those at high doses as a cleanse, a parasite cleanse. Every 6 months, and sometimes they do one type a certain time of year and another type another time of the year, and so which makes sense.
I just read an article about I can't remember the term of that class of vegetable, but it was onions, garlic, and I said, man, I eat half of those all the time. I'm going to get the other half. So I copied the article and went to the grocery store, and because I love all those veggies. I'll saute them slightly, just a little bit, roast them a little bit, and then put them on a salad. Anyway.
Oh yeah,
I got to think it's good.
The allium type things, the garlics, garlics and things like that. So
it was allium. That was the term I was looking for.
Yeah, allium is kind of a group of, and there's several different products in that, in those, and actually, so cooking them slightly and/or crushing them, mixes those ingredients together and activates the main ingredients on that. So yes, I hope that you found this information helpful today. Remember, check with your local healthcare provider or your integrated provider. Let's put it that way. So,
mainstream medical may not connect with all the things we're talking about.
That's right.
There's a way to change that.
That's right.
Got to bring it up.
We have to bring it up. And yes, we are blessed with this information that we are having that's readily available nowadays. 30 years ago when I first started in this area, it was hard to find this information. But it was there, and it was being developed, but now it's readily available. Your doctor may not be familiar with it. Doesn't mean that won't work. It's just that they haven't had time to study it, learn it, and become familiar with it to endorse it.
I have lots of people that come in and go, I just got diagnosed with cancer. What do I do? And I said, you call Keith.
Okay.
I said, you go to Keith's website. There's a tremendous amount of information that's absolutely free. And you do a 15-minute consultation just to
initial
see if there's
consultation,
a fit and talk about what you're dealing with. And you're one of the most affordable people in this space that I've come around. I mean, it's what I would do. You would be my first call if I was dealing with a cancer.
Yeah, well, thank you for the plug.
and everybody that's here. I mean, you're helping a lot of our clients, and I'm just one little tool. You got to have those tools. I'm just one little tool.
Yeah. Well, thank you for hosting this today and hosting the meetings and everything. And so you have many different services that you offer here too. So check that out. And matter of fact, I saw a ladies' health heart conference thing going on.
Well, we have, Tara said we need to have a ladies' day, and she has women that come in and as speakers. So that happens in the chamber, and they get in there and they learn.
That's great.
So, yeah, a lot of things going on.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Keith with PrevailOverCancer.com, and I'm Paul with Hyperbaric Plus in Oklahoma City, 122nd in May. I know Keith is international, and if you're ever flying through Oklahoma City, stop in and take a dive with us. But pretty interesting what we're doing.
Yes, it is.
So thanks for being here,
Yeah,
Keith. We will talk again later. See you guys next week, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Thanks.